Magnus here. What's going on, guys? And I'm here with
Oliver Fernandez.
I almost forgot his name on camera for some reason.
Really, I'm your cousin.
It's pretty messed up. So, in today's show, what we want to talk about is kind of go through different perspectives and different positions. In our last podcast, we had an amateur videographer and what I called myself a pro videographer in that sense. But in this case, we're going to deal with someone who's technically savvy when it comes to video equipment, such as myself, versus someone who's more experienced when it comes to cinematography and creativity when he films. So first, let's start with talking about you and your career and the fact that you've had over 20 years experience when it comes to filming. So go ahead.
Oh, that's right. I've had 20 years experience. I've been in the video game for 20 years, almost 20 years now. Started off back in the days of Super VHS. For all you millennials that don't know, it's those big VHS tapes. But these are special because you need special VCRs and special tapes and special cameras to shoot and play and everything. So that was our version of HD. Before we moved to the next step, which is HD, but digital video cameras thing. So I started with that. The first ever starting digital program ever used was called Media 100. If that doesn't even exist anymore. This is before Premiere, before Final Cut. So after that, just been going on with the evolution, working with different agencies, editing commercials, doing my own type of stuff.
When it comes to basically your experience, you go back such a long time, 20 years, and it seems that back then, I mean today, specifically in 2008 and going forward, Canon started the DSLR revolution where a lot of videographers and cinematographers would actually start to get into using those type of camera bodies in order to film what looked like high-end pictures. But back in the late 90s and early 2000s, that didn't exist. So I would imagine that someone in your profession, specifically as a freelancer, would have to get their hands on traditional video cameras. So what were your video cameras of choice, or what did a video camera need back then for you to consider that good and for one of your projects?
Well, like I said, when I started for the consumer based, because it was simply this: it was video and film. There was really nothing in between, and from my understanding at the time, for the consumer base, the biggest thing you can have is Super VHS.
Right.
And like I said, that takes a special VCR player to play it, special camera. You just couldn't get your uncle's video camera and put a Super VHS in there. It wouldn't work. I thought Super VHS at the time were like, again, to my understanding at the time, the HD version of VHSs, where they produce more color, you get more richness for what you were filming. But back in those days, it was either that or film. There was no in between. No video camera did the stuff that video cameras do now. It's either you do or you don't.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, a year later, after I started getting into it, that's when the XL1 came out, the Canon XL1 and the mini digital camera, and that's when that whole revolution began. And then the contest of better quality in those digital cameras started, and that was the birth of what you see today.
Like, from your perspective,
that was when those little mini DVs came out, and cameras started to become small. And remember, this is before they were installed into phones and into what we know as conventional picture cameras. These were still video cameras, but they were getting smaller because you didn't need the space for a giant VHS. So that's when that started. That Panasonic, Sony, Canon, that little tiny war of like who has the better camera to film. And at the time, the standard was the XL1, the Canon XL1.
Right. All right. So from my experience, I've tended to use small little cameras that I could get my hands on, and one of my first small video cameras was an one of the first HD Panasonic like handheld cameras.
Oh, I remember that one.
It was like $600, but it was the smallest one at the time. It had a flip out screen, and I thought under well light conditions that camera was pretty good, but it had to be well lit conditions because if not, then you weren't able to get any results out of it. So from my experience, though I started off with using like 2 VCRs and just recording stuff and going back and forth, and I did that one little black and white movie off of that really bad camera once.
I still liked it. I liked it because it had that whole looking like old fashioned feeling.
Yeah, it was a look. So from that end, that's where I started from, and then it kind of picked up from there. But it really didn't take off until I started getting. I started with the XA10, and then from there I got my hands on a few DSLRs, and then
it was off to the races. Off to the races.
So moving on, I got a little cheat sheet here where I'm asking all the questions. Of course he does.
That's what I'm looking at right now, but I'm not really looking at it.
So let's take it from the past and go to the current stages of your profession. What cameras would you prefer to use? What cameras are your assets, and what do you think about the cameras that you currently use for different projects, and how do you use them?
Well, the current cameras I use now are, the Lumix GH4, the Samsung, practically ones that you talked about in the past.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. The thing is, this is different now. Things are different now than before because now you have way more options, way more quality. Like, now, as of before, if I wanted to film a movie and make it look like a movie, I need to go on film. Right. Now, you don't need to do that. You don't need to buy a Red. You don't need to buy, the latest film camera. You can make a film or a movie or music video, anything, and make it look professionally good with the right lighting, the right setting and everything with a camera that costs, a fraction of the price of those major cameras. So it's no longer a choice of like, I want this camera because it's the best in the industry, and it will make my film look great. Now it's just an issue of like, yeah, that's great, but I don't need that. Right. I don't need to go that far. Now there's more options and more dimensions. There's more of a grain. It's no longer black and white. It's no longer video camera and film. Now there's so many grays in between that. Dealer's choice. Straight up dealer's choice at this point. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing because now more people can pump out more content inexpensively and at their own pace and at their own level without having to submit to paying and doing this and doing that just to get the quality they wanted.
Right, the results that they want.
Because with a video camera back in the days, you're not gonna get the lighting you want. Even if you light it up, you're not gonna get it.
You're not gonna get that look. Basically.
That look. Now you can.
Yeah.
Even with your phone, you could do that.
Yeah, so, and I can agree with this in the sense that today's camera can do so much more than what you can accomplish 15, 20 years ago. With the smaller sensors that you had at the time, though, one thing...
Sensors? We didn't have sensors. What's a sensor? We had wood and rope. That's how we filmed. And that's how it worked.
But basically... it was just a different world, and now that we can actually all be creators and we have a platform that we can just upload all of our creations to share with the world a lot easier. I think that the film industry and the basic video production industry has exploded in the past 10, 15 years. So that's helped us a lot to really show our talents out there in the world. We're talking about equipment. We're talking about, cameras of yesteryear and cameras of today, right? But I think a big question that has always been debated, at least very much online and even in person, is what do you think? Now, this is my opinion. This is what I want to ask you and then answer myself. What is your opinion when it comes to the difference of equipment versus a talented cinematographer, director, producer? What matters more, the right equipment or the right talent to tell that story?
Well,
obviously, there are many opinions
that's
out there.
That's a mouthful of a question. First of all,
Yes.
like I could sit here and talk for an hour about the intricacies of each one of them, but I'm gonna put it to you like this. The way I look at it is basically you can have one good thing, one bad thing, and then you have the middle. For example, you can have all the great equipment in the world, but then you come out with Michael Bay's Transformers. You know?
Yeah.
A ridiculous storyline, plot holes, bad, just bad. And then the other spectrum, the other side of that spectrum, you have Kevin Smith's Clerks. No good equipment, but a great storyline that people love, fan base live forever. Now, in my opinion, in filmmaking, you need to find the perfect middle.
Right.
Some examples of that are like, for all you fanboys out there, I'm just gonna break it down. The Dark Knight. Great story, high-end equipment to the point they were using IMAX and all that.
Right.
That's perfect harmony in filmmaking. So that's the way I look at it. But to be honest with you, if I had to pick which is more important, it's really just the art. The art, in my opinion, and I know it sounds a little biased, but at the same time, we've seen evidence of this where you have movies with no budget, practically no budget, shoddy lights, shoddy equipment, but they resonate and they can last forever, as opposed to a movie that got $100 million just for the cameras alone, best equipment, and then they produce something that you forget like in 2 days later. I can remember every line in Reservoir Dogs, but I can only remember 2 scenes in San Andreas, basically.
Now, when it comes to that, fine, both of those movies were filmed with expensive cameras, but the direction is different. Would you feel the same way about Reservoir Dogs had it been shot on an 8mm handheld camera, but with the same direction?
No, again, if it's the same, it doesn't matter. If let's say Reservoir Dogs was shot on IMAX with better lighting, better whatever, yeah, the style might look better, but the substance is still there. The root of the story is still there, and that's what matters the most.
Right.
In my opinion, it's the root of a story. Because you can make a story look in many different art forms. With low camera, phone, HD, freaking a red, and then your highest film camera. But if you keep the root of the film, of the story, it doesn't matter how you film it. See, the thing is, when you have a good story, it has flexibility to go anywhere. When you have a bad story, that's when you have to hide it with other things, And like I said, it's like a spectrum. And in that spectrum, you have let's say you have your Clerks here, Transformers here, and right in the middle you have your Dark Knight, where it's the perfect center. That's where you could judge movies based on equipment as opposed to storyline, and then some things you'll let a movie get away with it just because the story's better, but other times you'll sin it because it's like this is ridiculous. But that's the spectrum. That's the way I look at it as far as equipment. But at the end of the day, what matters more is the root of the story. You need to have a compelling, cohesive Michael Bay story in order to captivate the audience. And it doesn't matter. Look at Cloverfield. A lot of people were captivated in Cloverfield, and some people at the end of the day didn't like it, and there's mixed feelings.
Them sick.
It doesn't matter. They captivated them because it looked like a found footage of some crazy things happening. Compare that to Transformers, blatant. It's like, oh, it's right. Yeah, we know that you made this in digital ties, and we, So I keep hitting on Transformers, the movie. I'm sorry, it's using it as an analogy concept, but it's just fresh in my mind. It's just like, ugh.
Now, when it comes to my opinion in that, I do believe that story comes first when it comes to whatever you're filming, and the talent is very much needed. However, I also believe that if you don't know how to use the equipment that you have in order to tell that story, that idea and your talent can fall apart. So I don't believe that I do believe that stories are important, but I believe that the knowledge of what you have, regardless of how low end or high end it is, that's part of the art when it comes to storytelling. Having that 8mm camera or that red cinema camera and knowing how to use it to fit it into how you tell your story. So that cinematography is crucial, but it's also assisted with the equipment that you have. So that's my personal opinion. And of course, again, I do believe that story and that talent, that ability to tell that story is of the utmost importance. But you cannot discount the fact
you can't. You're right.
what you have in order to tell that story.
You can't, and I agree with you. It is an art form. It is a legit art form to know what you're doing behind the camera. Even if it's, like you said, the cheapest to the last, even if you know all of them, it's an art form. It's an art form. It's a craft. Unfortunately, it's not one of these things that, I need to be born with it. No, you can learn. Anybody can learn. It's a craft. You can even be better than me if you start today. Anybody, it's just you make it what it is, and that's what's great about it. It's like a perfect mix of art and technology.
Right.
And and the thing is, I don't disagree with you of having the greatest equipment. You could have the greatest equipment. It's just for having a great lasting film, unless you just want to make a chop shop film just to make money, to each his own. That's why we have Fast and the Furious. But it has its place. I'm not gonna hate. Fast and the Furious has its place. It has its happy moments. I'm not gonna hate on it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna hate on it. I'm not gonna say it's the greatest franchise of all time, but I'm not gonna hate it. It has its place. It's entertaining for the most part. Like I said, it has a craft. The way I look at it, it's like in Star Trek: The Next Generation. I believe you have Geordi is your equipment guy, and Picard is your director, art guy, who manages the story. Because as great as Picard is, and he's the captain, he ain't gonna know half the stuff Geordi knows.
Yeah.
Geordi could take an entire engine and take it apart. Picard's he's gonna probably know some of it, but at the end of the day, he's gonna be like, I don't know how to do this. Give me Geordi, give me Data. Mm-hmm. So that's why I look at it. You need both. Obviously, you need both to have a cohesive unit. And it's funny you should say that. I'm gonna go back to Michael Bay for just 1 second. Look, Michael Bay has a great technique. He has a great technique in the sense of the way he films, his styles of film, the equipment he uses, whatever. But it's just, it needs to be honed correctly. It's like a very powerful weapon. And he's just, in my opinion, he's just going all over the place. It needs to be controlled. And if he has the right story, if you give Michael Bay the right story, the right script, and you just let him follow the script with your style, I think he could make a great film. He is capable of making a great film.
He's got a lot of classic lines that he's directed before.
But he has, look, for all the sins I say the original Bad Boy has, it's a great action movie. I enjoy it. It's great. It's the plot doesn't have to be that thick. It is for what it's action packed, but it's fun. It's a great movie. Same thing with Armageddon. It has its cheesy moments, whatever. But again, that's in that gradient thing that I was saying. There's some things you could forgive, even with great equipment, and even the story's a little shine. But if you balance that correctly, you can make a good film.
Wasn't Pearl Harbor an excellent movie?
See, Pearl Harbor is one of those films where I believe that's when everything starts to split for him. That's when he was bouncing the difference between good somewhat could be great to come on, man, what are you doing?
What did you do?
If you see, the thing is about Pearl Harbor is one of these movies. If you re-edit that movie, it could be a good movie. It could be a solid but good movie, like the first Transformers.
So to pretty much sum it up, I think we've gotten to the point of knowing
Michael Bay
to an extreme extent, and I think we know kind of your mindset when it comes to these type of situations where you have to have the right eye and you have to have the right direction and control yourself and not get obsessed with the fact that you've got 200 explosions that you can possibly set off,
exactly.
and I'm gonna use all 200.
No, you just what you just need is a competent writer to lay in the groundwork and say, this is how we're gonna do this. Because you could have all the explosions in the world, but still make a great film. You know, like, again, I'm gonna go to The Dark Knight. I'm gonna go to Dark Knight because that's the common ground for everything. Because everybody loves The Dark Knight or whatever. But you know, that's a movie that has great filming equipment and great people that know how to use that equipment, and we're using it, you know, competently, and how to use it and you know, how they want to use it, whatever, with a great story, with just a great story, and you know, it captivates people.
So,
you know, and it's gonna be on forever, and you know that, and to me, I think that should be the ultimate goal for filmmakers, is you don't have to make the greatest movie, you just have to make the movie that have people talking forever. Say, yeah, the movie only made like, you know, $8 million in the box office. It's so good, you should watch it. You know, that's what you should thrive for.
And that is definitely something that everyone should thrive for. And to that extent, to those watching who want to thrive for that, what's the one piece of advice that you can give a future filmmaker?
Just believe in yourself and do what you want to do. Don't try to be like any other director. Don't be yourself. Use them as inspiration. Use their techniques to further, you know, your career, because everybody learns from everybody. You know, everybody takes from everybody, learns from everybody. It's just basically, you know, if you love film and you study film and you look at film, it's just taking all the techniques everybody has ever used and placing them the way you want to. At the same time, hopefully one day you could find something that somebody will go, oh my God, that's a great technique, I want to use that.
Yeah.
So just be yourself. Don't worry about, oh, I want to be like this director, I want to be like this director. But forget that. Use them as inspiration. Use their films as guidelines. But remember, you're not them, you're you. So do it how you want to do it. People like it, if they don't, so be it. Not every famous, you know, we live in a world, I'm gonna say it again, where Transformers makes 5 times more of the movies than freaking Django.
Yeah. All right, so
it's like I'm taking crazy pills.
If we wanted to find your work on YouTube, where can we find you?
You can find me at X, like X-Men or Degeneration X, CapRO, CAPRO, and on YouTube, and that's it. I mean, I went on YouTube before any of this could happen, so that's why my name is very like, that's not really a name for a YouTube page.
Yeah.
But again, we didn't know what YouTube was going to be at the time. We just going to upload videos and that's it. We didn't know channels and all that. But hopefully one day I will have a channel, maybe.
So I'll put the link at least to some of his previous work right here on the screen down below. And thank you guys for joining us on this podcast.
Remember, those are only the work that I'm allowed to put on the internet.
Exactly.
Not porn.
But as always, like, share, hit our Twitter up.
Subscribe. Say subscribe. People like saying subscribe.
And thank you for subscribing to my channel. I'm almost at 1,000, and that has everything to do with everyone who subscribed to me up to this point. And as always, you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus.
That's Magnus.
Yeah. And I'm out. We're out.
He's out. We're out.
See you guys later.
You don't want to know how many subscribers I have.
And we're done.
And then I have a show.